It's a lot about risk. It's a word the media well seems to really like. They love to attach it to me. They say I'm a gambler. They talk about me betting everything on crazy ideas. I think we need to redefine that word. Gambling is when you go to Las Vegas, you put money on a roulette table, the odds are fixed and they're against you. In the long run, the house always wins. It's a zero-sum game, or maybe a negative-sum game. When you're trying to build something new, a company, a breakthrough technology, you are not accepting the odds. You are trying to change the odds. Those are two completely different things. Today I want to talk about risk. Not the Las Vegas kind of risk. I want to talk about calculated risk. To do that, I have to take you back to 2002 and then to 2008. The abyss and the nature of choice. The truth about PayPal. Let's go back to 2002. We had just sold PayPal to eBay. It was a long road, a hard road. We went through everything insane. Fraud rates, broken banking systems, government regulations that made no sense, and internal chaos that nearly tore the company apart. But in the end, we made it work. We built something that changed how money moves on the internet. And when the deal closed, my share came to about $180 million after taxes. Now, that's a lot of money for anyone, but especially for someone who not that long ago had been sleeping on the office couch at Zip2, someone who used to shower at the YMCA because I couldn't afford an apartment, someone who literally lived on $1 a day just to keep the company alive. So you can imagine going from $1 a day to $180 million feels pretty surreal. It's like going from survival mode to God mode overnight. At that moment, the logical question was, what now? What's the safe play? What would any sane, rational person do? Every financial advisor, every business school, every textbook in the world gives you the same answer. Diversify. Play it safe. Buy a house in Palo Alto. Maybe if you get a nice car, maybe a private island somewhere, put the rest in index funds, in bonds, in blue chip stocks, never work again. That's what they tell you. That's the smart move. That's how you stay rich forever. But I didn't do that because I wasn't trying to stay rich. I was trying to stay useful. I looked at that $180 million and I didn't see a finish line. I didn't see security. I saw fuel. Fuel for the next thing. Fuel for the future. I wanted to help build. See, for me, money has always been a tool, never the goal. It's like rocket fuel. You don't collect it to admire it. You burn it to go somewhere new. So I decided to go all in. And I mean literally all in. I took that $180 million and split it into 3 bets, 3 missions, $100 million into SpaceX. Because if humanity is going to survive long term, we have to become multiplanetary. $70 million into Tesla, because if we keep burning fossil fuels, civilization collapses anyway, and $10 million into SolarCity because sustainable energy is the backbone of the future. That was it, all of it. No backup plan, no rainy day fund, no private island, just 3 missions. When I told people what I was doing, they thought I'd lost my mind. Friends, family, investors, everyone. They said, Elon, you're crazy, you just made a fortune and now you're throwing it all away on rockets and electric cars. They weren't wrong to think that way. By conventional logic, it was insane. It was reckless. But here's the thing, I wasn't betting on luck. I was betting on physics. I was betting on engineering. I was betting on human potential. I wasn't gambling to make more money. I was investing to make a better future. And deep down, I knew even if I lost every dollar, even if it all went to zero, if it pushed humanity one step forward, it would still be worth it. That's what people didn't understand. It wasn't about being bold. It wasn't about being a risk taker. It was about doing what had to be done. Because when you see a path that can lead to the survival and advancement of humanity, you don't wait for someone else to take it. You take it yourself. So yes, I went all in. Not because it was safe, not because it was smart in a financial sense, but because it was necessary. And maybe it was a little bit crazy, but sometimes The only way to move the world forward is to be just crazy enough to try. 2008, hell on earth. Now let's fast forward to 2008. If you want to know what real risk looks like, let's talk about 2008. It was frankly the worst year of my life. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. At the same time, it was a perfect storm. Let's start with SpaceX. We were a rocket company that couldn't get a rocket to orbit. We were trying to launch the Falcon 1, first launch 2006. It lifts off, and then 33 seconds later, the engine catches fire, and the rocket falls back, exploding in a fireball. Failure. Second launch, 2007, got a bit higher, but still failure. Third launch, August 2008. This time we had a NASA payload on board. We almost made it, but the first stage collided with the second stage after separation. Failure again. 3 launches, 3 failures. My entire initial $100 million was gone. We had burned through the money. SpaceX was on the verge of bankruptcy. Now let's talk about Tesla. Tesla was trying to mass produce the Roadster, the first electric sports car. And we're doing this in the middle of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Banks were collapsing, Lehman Brothers vanished, and the giants of the auto industry, General Motors and Chrysler, they were on their way to Washington begging the government for a bailout to avoid bankruptcy. And us, we were a tiny electric car startup in the Bay Area trying to build an expensive sports car. We were hemorrhaging money. The cost to produce the Roadster was far higher than the price we could sell it for. Every car we shipped, we lost money. We were missing deadline after deadline. Cash was running out. Tesla was also on the verge of bankruptcy. And on a personal level, things weren't any better. I was going through an expensive and public divorce. The press, they were having a field day. They were writing obituaries for both Tesla and SpaceX. They had death watches. They called me a fool who had squandered his PayPal fortune. I never thought I'd have a nervous breakdown, but I remember getting pretty darn close. The moment of choice, it was late 2008, and I was out of cash completely. After selling everything I could, after putting every last dollar into the companies, I had maybe $30 or $40 million left. Now, that might still sound like a lot, but not when you're running 2 companies that are both burning millions a month and both on the brink of death. This is when risk stops being a word in a business book and starts becoming something that keeps you awake every single night. I was staring at a very real, very simple, and very brutal choice. I could take what little I had left and put it all into one company and let the other one die, or I could split the money, try to save both. It sounds simple when you say it, but in that moment, it was torture. Conventional business logic said, save one. Save one, at least you'll have something left. That's what every investor told me. That's what every advisor said. Pick one, let the other one go. It's the rational move. But here's the problem. I couldn't do it because how do you choose between your own children? How do you decide which one lives and which one dies? And it wasn't just emotional. It was existential. Because I wasn't choosing between 2 companies. I was choosing between 2 futures for humanity. If I let Tesla die, we would lose our best shot at solving climate change. If I let SpaceX die, we would lose our best shot at becoming a multiplanetary species. Both missions mattered. Both were essential. Both were part of the same story. A future where humanity survives, thrives, and expands beyond one fragile world. So how could I give up either one? I couldn't. So I did the thing that every investor, every banker, every so-called expert said was completely insane. I split the money, half to Tesla, half to SpaceX. It could have been the worst decision of my life. Because by doing that, I risked killing both. Neither company might have had enough to survive. And honestly, I didn't know if they would. I really didn't. After I made that final investment, I was completely broke. Not just low in cash, zero. Tapped out. I had to borrow money from friends just to pay rent. There were days I literally didn't know if I'd still have a company or a home by the end of the month. That's what real risk feels like. It's not numbers on a spreadsheet. It's not a headline or a story about bold entrepreneurs. It's you standing at the edge of the abyss, looking into total failure, and choosing to step forward anyway. That was the moment of choice, the point of no return. So the question isn't why did you take that risk? The real question is what made you believe it was worth it? What kind of calculation makes a person bet everything not on luck, but on physics, on engineering, on the belief that something impossible could actually work? That's the question. And that's where the story turns. Because the answer, the reason I made that choice lies in physics. Not emotion, not faith, not luck, physics. The most unforgiving and the most honest judge of all. Deconstructing risk with physics. This is the calculated part. What was that calculation? It wasn't based on business spreadsheets or McKinsey market analysis reports. It was based on physics. The analogy trap, most people, and in fact, most of our lives, we reason by analogy. This basically means copying what other people do with slight variations. We look at how something has always been done, and we assume that's the only way or the best way to do it. We do this because it's a mental shortcut. It's efficient. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or the door or the spoon every day. But if you want to do something new, something disruptive, analogy is a deadly trap. It tells you that things are expensive or impossible because it's always been that way. Rockets must be expensive because they've always been expensive. Electric car batteries must be expensive because they've always been expensive. This is a pretty dumb way to think. It's a recipe for stagnation. Reasoning from first principles, there's another way of thinking. I tend to approach things from a physics framework. Physics teaches you to reason from first principles. This method means you boil things down to the most fundamental truths that you can imagine and then reason up from there. You ignore all assumptions, all conventions. You ask, what do the laws of physics say? This is the best way to figure out if something really makes sense or if it's just social convention. And this is the powerful method physicists use to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. Let's apply this to the two problems that nearly killed me in 2008. Case study, one, SpaceX and the cost of rockets. When I first wanted to send something to Mars, originally just a small greenhouse, a thing called Mars Oasis, I looked into buying a rocket, reasoning by analogy. I went to Russia a few times. I tried to buy a refurbished intercontinental ballistic missile. They said, sure, $65 million for one. It was too expensive. My plan wouldn't work. So on the flight back, I started thinking from first principles. First principles thinking, I stopped and asked, what is a rocket made of? It's not made of magic. It's made of aerospace-grade aluminum alloys, some titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. Next question, what is the value of those materials on the commodities market? The answer was staggering. It turned out the raw material cost of a rocket was only about 2% of the typical sales price. 2%. So here was the calculated risk. 98% of the cost of a rocket was not physics. It was the cost of a rocket. Inefficiency. It was the cost of massive bureaucracy, cascading subcontractors, and decades of doing things the same way. The barrier was not physics. The barrier was engineering. And engineering is solvable. My calculation was, if we can figure out how to turn those raw materials into a working rocket and reuse it, we could fundamentally change the economics of space travel. A cost reduction, not of 10% or 20%, a cost reduction of maybe 100-fold. That is why SpaceX was founded. Case study 2, Tesla and the cost of batteries. Now let's apply the same logic to Tesla. Reasoning by analogy. Everyone in the auto industry and all the experts said, electric cars can never work. They'll never compete with gasoline cars. Why? Because batteries are so expensive. At the time, battery packs cost about $600 kilowatt hour. People said they will always be that expensive because they have been in the past. First principles thinking, I said, wait, what are batteries made of? Again, not magic. They are made from cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, some polymers for separation, and a steel can. Next question, if we bought that stuff on the London Metal Exchange, what is the basic material cost? And the answer was, it was only about $80 kilowatt hour. The calculation, again, physics permitted it, $80 kilowatt hour for the materials versus a $600 kilowatt hour market price mission as the shield. So even if you know it's physically possible, it is still incredibly, incredibly difficult. knowing the materials for a rocket are only 2% of the cost doesn't get you through the first 3 failed launches. It doesn't help you make payroll when you're broke. To get through years like 2008, you need a reason. You need a reason to get up in the morning that is bigger than making money. Money's not the motivator. If my motivation was money, I would have kept the $180 million, bought an island, and well-sipped cocktails. The motivation has to be strong enough to endure chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Existential risk. For me, that motivation came from college. When I was in university, I had an existential crisis. I was thinking about what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? I came to the conclusion that if we can expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we have a better chance of figuring out the answers to those questions. And to do that, we have to ensure that consciousness continues to exist. So I thought about what problems would most affect the future of humanity. Identified a few things. The internet, making information instant and global. Sustainable energy, because without it, civilization collapses. And the extension of life beyond Earth to become a multi-planetary species. I was lucky enough to be involved in the internet with SIP2 and PayPal. After that, I had to tackle the other two. Mission 1, Tesla and sustainable energy. This is the reason for Tesla and Solar City. I've said this before, Tesla is to protect life on Earth. We are running a crazy experiment with the only atmosphere we have. We are taking billions of tons of hydrocarbons from deep within the Earth, where they have been sequestered for hundreds of millions of years, and putting them into the atmosphere. By definition, we must transition to renewable energy. Fossil fuels are finite. We will run out. So arguing against renewables is basically arguing that eventually we will run out of energy and die, or civilization will collapse. That seems like a bad outcome. So the mission of Tesla has always been, and will always be, to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport and sustainable energy production. It was not to make money. It was to prove that electric cars and solar power were not just possible, but better than gasoline cars and coal plants. Mission 2, SpaceX and multiplanetary life. And SpaceX is to extend life beyond. This is just as critical. The 4.5 billion year history of Earth is one long series of extinction events. Most of the life that has ever existed has been wiped out. Some events come from the outside, like the asteroid that took out the dinosaurs. Some come from the inside, like supervolcano eruptions. And now, wonderfully, we have invented our own existential risks. Nuclear war, engineered pandemics, out of control artificial intelligence. Sooner or later, one of these things will happen. To ensure the long-term survival of consciousness as we know it, we must become a multi-planetary species. We must have a backup on another planet. Mars is the best option. The window of opportunity to do this might be open for only a very short time. Our civilization seems robust, but it may be very fragile. We need to act now. And when I say that population collapse due to low birth rates is a much bigger risk to civilization than global warming, people get very confused. They say, aha, you've changed. You don't care about the climate anymore. No, that is not a change. It is an update to the risk stack. You have to constantly be evaluating the threats. Global warming is a huge risk, and Tesla's addressing it, but it is a slow-moving risk. Population collapse is a more fundamental risk, because if there are no humans, then solving global warming is meaningless. We need young, smart people to build the engineering solutions of the future. You have to be able to hold multiple ideas, multiple risks in your head at the same time. You have to solve all existential risks in parallel, surviving the brink. Now, let's go back to 2008. We are at the abyss. I am broke. Both companies are dying. I have bet everything on a physics calculation and a moral imperative. But making the bet is not enough. You have to execute. The 4th launch of Falcon 1, we are at SpaceX. We have failed 3 times. We have scraped together enough spare parts and money for one last try. This was it. There was no 5th chance. If this 4th launch failed, SpaceX was over. No more money, the end. September 2008. We launched the Falcon 1, and it worked. It worked perfectly. For the first time, the Falcon 1 made it to orbit. I cannot describe that feeling. I was in mission control when we confirmed orbit. The whole room just erupted. I remember saying at the time, that was freaking awesome. And it's great to have this giant monkey off my back. This wasn't just a corporate victory. This was the first time in history that a private company, privately funded, had developed a liquid-fueled rocket and achieved Earth orbit. It was something that before only nations, only superpowers had done. We proved it was possible. The call from NASA a few days later, just days after that successful launch, NASA called. They have been watching us very closely. They also needed a way to resupply the International Space Station after the space shuttle retired. And in December 2008, they awarded us the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services contract for $1.6 billion. That contract, that call. It saved SpaceX. It gave us a future Tesla's Christmas Eve, but that was only half the story. SpaceX was safe, but Tesla was still dying. The financial crisis was at its absolute worst. No one wanted to invest in a cash-burning auto startup. We were in a financing round. Investors were panicking. We desperately needed $40 a million just to survive. We were fighting day by day to convince our existing investors and new ones to participate. Our deadline was Christmas. If we could not close the round before the holiday, we would not be able to make payroll. The company would be bankrupt. It came down to the last hour. We closed the financing round at 6 p.m. on December 24th, 2008, 6 o'clock in the evening, Christmas Eve. It was the last hour of the last day possible. If we had failed to close that round, we would have bounced payroll 2 days later on the 26th. Tesla would have gone bankrupt. I had to put in my last remaining money. I had nothing left. SpaceX saved Tesla. You have to ask, why? Why did investors agree at the 11th hour on Christmas Eve, in the worst financial crisis in history, to pour money into a failing car startup? They did it because of what happened in September. The success of the Falcon 1 and the $1.6 billion NASA contract didn't just save SpaceX, it saved Tesla. That success proved that my methodology, that the first principles calculation was right. It proved that my team and I, we could do the impossible. It proved that even when faced with 3 failures, we found a way to win. It gave investors the confidence that even at the abyss with Tesla, we knew how to win. One victory at SpaceX provided enough credibility to fund the next victory at Tesla. The 2 companies, which had nearly killed each other, ended up saving each other. The power of work ethic. But none of that happens by itself. The first principles calculation shows you the opportunity. The existential mission gives you the reason. But to make it, you have to work like hell. This is a part of the risk calculation people often miss. You can change the probability of success. When I was young, I read a lot of books. I realized if I wanted to make things happen, I had to work much, much harder than everyone else. When my brother Kimball and I started our first company, Zip2, we had no money. We rented a tiny office, a studio, instead of an apartment. We slept on the sofa. We showered at the YMCA. We had one computer. The website was up during the day, and I coded it at night, 7 days a week, all the time. My girlfriend at the time had to sleep in the office to be with me. When you're trying to do something new and difficult, especially starting a company, you have to work well every waking hour. Do the simple math. Let's say someone at a competitor company is working 50 hours a week, and you're working 100 hours a week. You will get twice as much done in a year as the other company. Working hard doesn't guarantee success. There are a lot of people who work hard at things that are not effective. But when you are trying to do something on the edge of possibility, not working hard will almost guarantee failure. By putting more hours in, more focused effort on the problem, you are changing the odds. You are taking the risk and bending it to your will. The operating system for innovation, we survived 2008 somehow. But the lesson is not avoid risk. If you avoid risk, you will never do anything new. The lesson is how to systematically manage risk, how to build a machine, an operating system for innovation. And at the core of that operating system is a philosophy of failure. Failure I as an option. You know, there was this silly notion at NASA back in the day that failure is not an option. I understand what they meant. They didn't want to kill astronauts. And neither do we. Crew safety is our highest priority, always. But when you are developing new hardware, when you are building new rockets or new cars, at SpaceX, failure is an option here. I mean that. Here's why. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. If you are not failing, it means you are being too cautious. You are working in the safe zone of what is already known. When we were testing the Starship prototypes in Texas, we blew up quite a few of lots of spectacular footage. The media loved it. Look, SpaceX failed again. They didn't understand. Every explosion was a lesson. Every failure was a valuable stream of data. This doesn't mean catastrophic failure like losing a whole mission. It means if you are not pushing your hardware to the breaking point during development, you are not innovating fast enough. In the race to innovate, the bigger danger is stagnation. The math of innovation, the batting average, I don't care about a single failure like one Starship explosion. We expect that. What I care about is the overall batting average. Think of it like baseball. Even the best players only get a hit 3 out of 10 times. What you care about is not the one strikeout, but your average over time. Failure is irrelevant unless it's catastrophic. I think of it like this. You have a certain amount of time, and you want your net useful output to be the highest. In the set of all actions you take, some will fail, some will succeed. As long as your net total result is positive and growing, you are winning. The goal is to maximize the rate of iteration, increase the speed at which you learn, and the only way to learn fast is to fail fast. The engine of innovation, the negative feedback loop. So how do you improve your batting average? How do you accelerate that learning loop? This is probably my most important piece of advice for anyone in any field. Pay attention to negative feedback and solicit it, particularly from friends. Let me repeat that. Hardly anyone does that, and it's incredibly helpful. The human brain is wired to hate being wrong. It's a defense mechanism. We seek affirmation. We love to hear our ideas are great. But affirmation doesn't make you better. Criticism does. Your friends, they know what's wrong with your idea. They know your flaws, but they don't want to tell you because, well, they don't want to hurt you. You have to force it out of them. Say, tell me what's wrong. Treat it as a gift. When you get that feedback, don't be defensive. Listen. Even if you think they're wrong, listen carefully. There's probably a kernel of truth in it. At Tesla and SpaceX, we try to build this culture. We want people to point out the dumb things. I would rather be told I am wrong than continue to do something wrong. The complete operating system. So now you can see the whole system. It is a complete operating system for making the impossible possible. 1. The goal, pick a problem that is important enough for the future of humanity. This justifies the risk. It is your shield against despair. 2. The method. Deconstruct the problem to its fundamental physical laws to see if it's truly possible, regardless of convention. This calculates the risk. It turns a market risk into an engineering risk. 3. The process. Execute with a fanatic work ethic. Embrace failure as necessary for innovation. Iterate quickly. And actively seek negative feedback. This mitigates the risk in real time. That's it. That's the whole algorithm. The next risks. This philosophy isn't just a history lesson about 2008. It's how I make decisions right now. The risk never stops because civilization's problems never stop. The risk stack is always changing. The AI risk. Let's talk about Neuralink. People think Neuralink is about curing brain diseases. And yes, on the first level, that is its mission. We hope to soon help people with paralysis, blindness, deafness, or other brain and spinal injuries. That is an incredibly noble goal. But the long-term mission is a risk mitigation strategy. I have been saying this for years. I believe superintelligent AI is a fundamental existential risk, maybe the biggest one, along with nuclear war. If we create a digital intelligence that is billions of times smarter than we are, what happens? Best case scenario, we become pets, like house cats. Worst case scenario, we are extinguished. So what do we do? I thought about this a lot, and I came to the conclusion, if you can't beat it, maybe you should merge with it. We need a high bandwidth brain-machine interface. Right now, our input is good, but our output is very slow. We type with our fingers. We talk. That is extremely low bandwidth. Neuralink is an attempt to create a third digital cortical layer that allows the human mind to communicate with AI at the speed of thought. It's the only way humans can keep up with AI. It is a massive technical risk. Brain surgery, robotic implants, incredibly risky. But to me, the risk of not doing it is even greater. The civilization risk. And that brings me to X or Twitter. Oh, this one confused a lot of people. Why did you buy Twitter? People thought it was a business decision. You overpaid. It was not a business decision. Frankly, from a financial standpoint, it was not a great way to make money. I bought it to help humanity. As I said, I believe we need a common digital town square. Free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and a broadly trusted public platform is extremely important to the future of civilization. Buying X was an attempt to protect that space, to ensure that people could speak their minds within the bounds of the law. It was a financial gamble. It has caused me no end of headaches, but it was a civilizational necessity. The existential risk portfolio. Now you can step back and see the whole picture. Think of it as an existential risk portfolio. All my companies are not separate bets. They are one unified portfolio against human extinction. Tesla and SolarCity hedging against climate and energy risk, hedging against single planet risk, hedging against the risk of being surpassed by AI, hedging against civilizational informational risk, the collapse of free debate, hedging against the risk of population collapse. The 2002 decision to invest the $180 million was not a single event. It was the first execution of a philosophy I am still following today. You calculate risk not based on what you stand to lose financially. You calculate risk based on what humanity stands to lose if you don't act a call to action. So why am I telling you all this? Because the world needs more people to take calculated risks, especially now. If you are a student or just starting your career, I want to talk directly to you. Advice one, take risks now. When you're young, that is the time to take risks. Now is the time. People often ask me, when's the right time to start a company, or when's the right time to take a big leap? And the answer is almost always when you're young. Because when you're young, the downside is limited. You don't have much to lose. You probably don't have a mortgage. You probably don't have kids depending on you. You don't have 10 people relying on your paycheck. Your biggest risk is maybe eating cheap noodles for a while. And honestly, ramen is not that bad. I've done it. You can survive on that. You can sleep on a couch. You can share a place with your friends. You can live with uncertainty, and that's okay. That's freedom. That's your greatest advantage. As you get older, your obligations increase. You have responsibilities, a family, kids, people who count on you, and suddenly your choices become narrower. You can't just roll the dice and say, if this fails, no big deal, because it doesn't just affect you anymore. So when you're young, before those responsibilities build up, that's when you have to push hard. That's when you should be bold. Start something, build something. Join a team that's doing something crazy and difficult. Work with people who inspire you. Do the thing that scares you, the thing that excites you so much it keeps you up at night. Because here's the truth, the older you get, the rarer that kind of freedom becomes. Life starts to lock in around you. And if you don't use your youth to take risks, to experiment, to learn, you'll wake up one day and realize you've been living by someone else's plan all along. So don't play it safe too early. Don't follow the beaten path just because it's comfortable. Don't reason by analogy, oh, this is how it's always been done. That's the fastest way to waste your potential. Look, failure when you're young is not fatal. It's education, it's data, it's experience that compounds. And if you fail, you'll learn more in one real attempt than you will in 5 years of theory. That's how I started. When I came to America, I didn't have much. I slept on the floor of my office. I showered at the YMCA. I lived on $1 a day, literally. But that didn't matter. Because I was doing something meaningful, I was building, I was learning. And I knew that if I failed, I'd just start again smarter, tougher, and better prepared. So if you're young right now and you're afraid to take a leap, stop waiting. There's no perfect time. There's only now. Take risks. Be bold. Do the thing that might not work, because that's where the breakthroughs happen. That's where life gets interesting. When you're young, the downside is small, but the upside, the potential impact you can have, is infinite. So go, try, take the risk. You won't regret it. Advice 2, focus on signal over noise. When you build something, anything, you have to focus obsessively on making the product or service better. That's the core, that's the signal. Everything else is noise. A lot of people, a lot of companies, they forget that. They get distracted, they get lost in the noise. They start thinking success is about image. They throw money at advertising, at branding agencies, at parties, at fancy offices, at endless meetings that don't change anything. They chase optics, not outcomes. And what happens? They look successful for a while, they trend, they go viral, they get applause. But the product, the thing that actually matters, stops getting better. That's how companies die. Not from competition, but from internal noise. At Tesla, we've never spent $1 on advertising. Not one. All the billions that other car companies spend on ads, we spend on engineering, R&D, design, and manufacturing. Because we want the product itself to be the message. If the car is great, if the rocket works, if the battery lasts, that is the marketing. That's the signal. You don't convince people with slogans. You convince them with performance, with reality. So every day, every decision, I ask one question. This thing we're doing, does it make the product better? That's it. That's the filter. If the answer is no, stop doing it. If the answer is yes, double down. Ask your team that question every single day. Does this meeting make the product better? Does this report make the service better? Does this effort make the customer experience better? If it doesn't, kill it, cut it, walk out of the meeting, delete the app, free up the energy, because time and attention are finite. And the more you waste on noise, the less you have for signal. Noise is seductive, it feels productive, it feels like motion, but it's just static. It doesn't move reality forward. Signal is the thing that changes the world. Signal is the code that runs, the rocket that flies, the car that drives, the idea that works. Signal is truth in action. When you cut away the noise, what's left is what's real, and that's where all progress comes from. So when you're building something, a company, a product, a career, remember this rule. If it doesn't make the product better, it's noise. If it does, it's signal. Focus all your energy on the signal. Ignore the noise. And over time, the world will notice, because reality has a way of cutting through everything else. Advice 3, attract great people. Finally, remember this. A company is not a logo. It's not a building. It's not the stock price or the brand or the mission statement on the wall. A company is simply a group of people who have come together to build something they believe in. That's it. That's all it really is. And the difference between a great company and a mediocre one is the people. You can have the best idea in the world, you can have unlimited funding, perfect timing, incredible technology, but if you don't have the right people, it won't work. Everything depends on them. How talented they are, how hard they work, how much they care, and how aligned they are toward one common goal. So your job as a founder, a leader, or even just as part of a team is to attract great people and keep them. Do everything you can to bring in those who raise the average. People who are smarter than you, people who challenge you, people who make the mission stronger. But don't just look for talent, look for heart, because skill without heart can be dangerous. You want people who care about the mission, not just the paycheck. People who are driven by curiosity, by purpose, by the desire to build something that matters. People who get excited not about how much money they'll make, but about what they're helping to create. I've said this before, at Tesla, at SpaceX, the bar is high. We look for exceptional ability, yes, but also the right motivation. If someone's main goal is to get rich or get famous, they won't survive the kind of intensity it takes to build the future. You need people who are mission-driven, who wake up thinking about how to make things better, who see the impossible, and say, let's figure it out. When you have those people, something incredible happens. Work stops feeling like work. You build faster. You solve harder problems. You laugh more, even in the chaos. Because everyone's moving in the same direction for the same reason. That's what culture really is, a group of people aligned around a purpose they actually believe in. So if you want to build something great, don't just hire employees. Build a team, a tribe. A small group of people crazy enough to believe they can change the world, because history shows that's the only kind of group that ever does. And once you find those people, protect them, support them, listen to them, challenge them. Because when you gather great people and point them in a great direction, you can create magic. Go create magic. I want to end with this. Arthur C. Clarke, one of my favorite science fiction writers, once said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Think about that. We are living in an age where 200 years ago, everything we do every day would be magic. Instant global communication, flying through the sky, access to all of human knowledge on a little device in your pocket, reusable rockets, cars that drive themselves. This is magic. You are the ones who make it. You are the engineers, the scientists, the builders, the entrepreneurs. You guys are the magicians of the 21st century. Don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit. Go out there and create magic. Thank you.